If you don't know me, I'm Herbert Smith, Plant City Police Department. My work phone number, my home phone number, my pager number is up there. I've got the distinction, or selected the distinction, however you want to put it, of teaching ethics tonight. And I hope you enjoy my one and only visual aid tonight, because the rest of it is going to play on each other's minds a little bit. Everybody see this good? Anybody know what this is?
Like the scales of justice.
Lady of Justice. Lady of Justice. You know what scales represent? I mean, you're in probation.
Equality.
Huh?
Equality.
Well, how is it equality? How does it represent equality?
I'm going on probation. I think that.
What it is?
It's not tipped in either direction.
You're not setting the weights on there either direction. The evidence is or it is not. Why is she blindfolded?
Justice is blind.
Justice is blind. This is my dream queen. Well, if you get into all the mythology, a lot of these symbols, or some of these symbols, are from the Bible. The sword of truth is what you fight with. There's a lot of symbology in the uniform we wear. Anybody know what the shield stands for that we wear? Why do we wear a shield on our uniforms all day?
Somebody shoot at. Protection. Armor. Like the knights.
In biblical mythology, the shield represents faith. The shield of faith. It's what the community or whoever employed you or people we represent, they put their faith into us to go out here and do a good job. So we wear a shield of faith. Star of courage. All depends on who you work for, but it's all the same thing. It's all symbolic. When you walk into somebody's house, they're going to look at you, and to a certain degree, based on the way you look, is the kind of respect that you're going to receive. Now, some of it might be to the way they've been treated in the past also, so they can't hold everything against them. She is blindfolded, because justice is blind. When we go out to a call, or we're working in the jail. I've been with Plant City Police Department in May, it'd be 4 years. I'm a field training officer. Prior to being employed here, I worked in the Polk County Sheriff's Department for corrections. Spent a year at the annex, year and a half at the main unit, and about a year in booking. So I've been on both sides of the coin, so to speak. There is not a tougher job than being a correctional officer. I have not yet met an outstanding correctional officer that could not do my job. But I've met plenty of good police officers that could not work in jail. They just could not make the transfer. Paperwork-wise, it's a different world. I do 10 times as much paperwork now as when I worked in the jail. But I'm not locked up with 120 inmates either. When you're working in a correctional facility, you're in there 12 solid hours. I mean, you're in there with the buttheads for 12 solid hours. No getting around. I'm working out on the street. I'm in Plant City. If I get a butthead, if I get one on shift, I deal with him maybe an hour, 2 hours max. Time I deal with him, get him medically cleared or whatever it takes, I'm done with him. In the jail, you're there all the way. But I wanted to bring her up, because that is a representation just as we are. She represents something, whether you're a correctional officer, whether you're a probation officer, whether you're a police officer, you represent something. And it's up to you whether or not you want to live up to that representation. Tonight, at the end of this block of instruction, there will be a written test in which, pass, the student will have to score 80% accuracy or above. During this block of instruction, the following will be discussed. We're going to talk about ethics, i.e., the title of my topic. Reasons why Americans are less ethical today than they have been in the past. We're going to discuss the primary institutions that have traditionally instilled ethics or been credited for instilling ethics in America. And we're going to talk about common offenses for which officers in this country are decertified. Why do people in our job field lose their jobs? Why is that faith taken away from them? Some common reasons why unethical acts are committed, and some suggestions in triumphing over any ethical decision. Everybody in here, who in here does not consider them to be in the field of criminal justice or law enforcement?
Sorry, what was the question?
I said, who in here does not consider themselves to be in the field of law enforcement or criminal justice? We all are. And even if our support personnel were in here, they are, whether they believe it they are or not, they are indirectly in this field. Because without our dispatchers, without our people working supply, without our people doing the type of things we don't have time to do, we cannot do what we do and do it effectively. What I want to talk about first is ethics. American ethics, just ethics in general. Who can define for me what they believe ethics means to them? Mr. Murphy, could you tell me what ethics means to you?
I guess I base mine mostly on morality.
Morality.
Treat others as you like to be treated.
The golden
Because
rule.
one day you might be in their situation.
Right. How about you, sir? How would you define ethics?
Morality, your morals, how you conduct yourself in your own life as well as in work.
Well, we've heard that class that you gave is the American Indian's ethic differ from, say, the average American's ethic? It's all treat people like you want to be treated. Do what is right. As a instructor friend of mine recently pointed out, always doing what is right isn't the same as doing the right thing. It's been who you're hanging with. Doing the right thing can definitely be different than doing what is right. Give you an example, working in a correctional institute. Adrenaline's going, fight is on, we're all in there, we're all hot, we're all heavy. MA's subdued. He's complied. Or he hasn't complied, but we've achieved our objective. He's no longer a threat to anybody. And somebody throws in that one extra strike to the back, kick to the groin, kick to the side. Doing the right thing, for those around there, doing the right thing would be, honestly, no, we didn't do that. I don't know what you're talking about. Doing what is right is telling an officer where he was wrong. For example, we all know about the inmate in Polk County Jail. Or do we not? Does anybody not know about the Polk County Jail that was killed during the use of forces? He died later in the hospital, where there were several officers involved in that. Has everybody heard about that? It's been several years now. But how many years back would you say it was, Carl?
4 years.
About 4 years ago?
Yeah.
I was working at the annex at the time that the incident went down. Had I been at the I was working main unit. Had I been at the annex at the time the incident went down, I was one of the guys when the fight went out, I was the first one in the door. First one with my hands on that inmate. First one trying to put them on the ground. But there's a good possibility if I was anywhere in the vicinity of this fight, I'd have been there. Because I was just about running you over to get to it. But if you were, that's what we were doing. And if you work in a correctional institute, you see it. If you haven't personally experienced it. Fortunately for me, I wasn't nowhere involved in this. But the officers that were, I know. I personally know. I wasn't involved in the investigation or anything, so I can't tell you all the ins and outs. But basically, one officer went too far with this inmate. It resulted in the inmate getting injured and later on dying. Now what I want to talk about is one of the officers who got drug into this. He was a brand new officer, fresh out of the academy. Everybody else was senior officers. He wasn't even in there at the time, at the exact moment that the inmate got hurt. He walks in right after. When he's got these senior officers, we need reports to cover this, right? And when you're got 3 or 4 senior officers and you're the new guy, and we're sitting down at the table and we're writing our reports together, and you're telling me what I need to put in this report, even though I didn't physically see this, chances are I'm going to put in this report what you tell me to put in this report. Because that's doing the right thing. Is that doing what is right? If I didn't see it, I shouldn't write it. I don't care who it was. I don't care if it was a sergeant. But I know where this officer's coming from, because when I was a new officer, if I'd have been sitting in there, and these officers I look up to, because they've been doing the job that I'm about to be doing, and they've been doing it for a long time, it's a good chance, okay, we did this, we did that, and you saw everything. Okay, sure. There you go. Now, the problem is, it all fell apart. Truth, which is a sword that the lady was holding, is double-edged. It has a way of coming back at you, coming back out. And if you've been untruthful about something, then you're either going to have to do one of two things: either fess up to it, or do some more untruth, and just get deeper and deeper into this. As a result of doing the right thing and not what is right, this correctional officer lost his job, lost his standards. He was eventually wanting to be a deputy sheriff. He cannot have anything to do directly with any kind of certified position. Ever. You really blame him, or you blame the senior officers who coached him into this? I blame the senior officers, because this guy didn't know what he was doing. You know, this guy didn't have much life experience. He was no military that I'm aware of. He was young. I want to work for the sheriff's office. This is my life's dream. Dream strong. By definition, ethics is a code or system of conduct that has universal obligations and duties that explain how to act. Ethics is also the most needed training area in many professions, to include the criminal justice field. I think in our field it's paramount, because it is too easy to get wrapped up when you're new in what everybody else is doing, whether it's right or wrong. It's too easy. I mean, it is, you just walk in there and people are doing things that, I go back to the jail because that's where I saw the most of it. When you're out in patrol, you're out on the street, you have officers do things, but a lot of times they're by themselves. We run, most everybody that I'm aware of in Florida run one-man units, unless they're in a really high crime area. On the street, I know of officers with my agency. They have a magical pen. They will swear to you that if they let go of this pen, it will stay in there and float, that it's so magical. It can float right through the air, float right through reports, and pretty much make up any story they want. You know, but they're the ones who are going to abide by that. I don't do that. But there might have been a time in my life where I would have done that if I had fallen into the wrong group of officers training me, or different situations happen in my life. Everything is a decision. We made a decision to come in this field. I know when I got hired at the Polk County Sheriff's Office, it took me almost a year to get on. I was awful glad to be there. I know when I got hired at Plant City, it took me 3 applications to get on. I was awful glad to be there. They didn't come to my house and ask me, would you please apply with our agency? You know, I went to their agency and said, will you please give me a job? You know, I wanted to be here. But we got to want to do a good job for the right reasons. Interpretations of ethical behavior vary from age to age and culture to culture. But in general, ethical behavior includes a whole list of types of physical traits. When I'm talking about age to age and culture to culture, things that we've had human diversity. Things are accepted in one country. Things that are accepted in our country may not be accepted in their country. That's correct behavior. Age to age. Let's talk about the 60s, since we got some great fans of the 60s in here. I'm not going to point nobody out like Winter Haven or anybody like that. Long hair. I grew up with long hair. I grew up when I was born in the Army. I had hair down the center of my back almost. But back when my parents were kids, I wasn't tolerant. You didn't walk out. People look at you crazy, talk about you like you're crazy. Gay bashing. 15 years ago, stand in a room, just talk about homosexuality or whatever, and just bash it to no end. But regardless of your sexual orientation, today, that is not acceptable behavior. Especially for us in public service, because, like it or not, they're part of the public we service. Now, I'm not saying I go out to the Green Parrot, hang out on your off-duty hours or anything like that. But I'm saying you have to respect that as the fact that they are part of the people that put this faith in your badge. Because without faith in it, without what it represents, it's just a piece of steel. I could make one out of a Coke can. It's just as important, if that's all it means to you. So values change. A lot of things we may not accept today or tolerate today, years from now, may be set standards. But I hope professionalism, because it will never let us down, professionalism and ethics running hand in hand. You can't really have one without the other. Some of the traits I was talking about are honesty, integrity, fairness, loyalty, kindness, courage, generosity. It takes a lot of courage, to me, for people to put on this uniform or one of a similar stature and go out and do a professional job. I don't care if it's a correctional officer. I don't care if you're in a suit as a probationary officer. Go out in front of your peers, and your peers are not doing the job that they should be doing. Yet you're sticking to your beliefs and you're going, I'm going to do not the right thing according to their standards, but what is right. That takes more guts than going to a domestic violence call and just handling the situation. Because we know what to do there. It's all clockwork. Would you agree that those traits that I've listed are ethical type behavioral traits?
Yes.
Anybody disagree with that? And honesty, integrity, courage, things like that aren't ethical type traits. By the same token, we can say that the opposite of these things is unethical behavior. Somebody's dishonest. Somebody's cowardice in a line of duty. Has anybody ever seen cowardice in a line of duty? I have. Command level staff cowardice in a line of duty when I was with the sheriff's office. And I've seen it on the streets where I work now in small degrees. It's a tough job. We had a female officer that I greatly respect because when she got out of the field training officer program and she worked about 2 weeks on her own on a night shift, she went into the chief's office and said, I can't do this. Now she sailed through the field training program. She went in there and said, I did not realize the difference that it would be to be by yourself going to these type calls. And I'm afraid. And I'm afraid that not only because of my fears, I may get myself hurt or another officer. That took guts because she gave up a job that she put herself through the academy for to get her. That took more guts than a lot of people that I've ever met. You know, because she went in there and faced the man in person. She didn't just say, I regret to inform you, I've accepted another position somewhere else, so I just don't want to work here, y'all bunch of jerks. She went in there and said, I was afraid. I'm afraid to do my job, and I can't do it. Yet I know officers who are afraid to do their job and don't do their job to the utmost of what the job should be done. We don't have the same internal fortitude. Like most people, Americans are sometimes generous, sometimes compassionate. They are sometimes dishonest and untrustworthy. Why do you think that is? Why do you think we're like that?
Want everybody to like us. Want to be everybody's friend.
All depends on the situation. I'll do for you if I think you can do for me.
Steve?
Yes, sir.
Or the old standby, if I don't get caught.
I don't get caught. That's a good standby. How many times we'll do something, ain't nobody watching me. I can get away with it. We all have different ethical standards because of the way we were brought up, because of our religious beliefs, because of our cultural heritage. But there's a set professional standard that we must adhere to, or we should get out of the job. If you can't adhere to the professional standard, you don't need to be wearing a badge of faith. You don't need to have it on. He'll cut you out one out of a Coke can and be just as good. At least you can justify that one a little bit better. There are many statistics indicate that Americans are less ethical today than in previous decades for various reasons. Mr. Sermons, why do you think we're less ethical as a nation, as a group of people today, than when our grandparents were around?
We are.
Basically, a little more law.
Why? Don't have neighbors over for dinner anymore?
Lost a lot of our values.
A lot of values. Speaking of, why don't we have the values that we used to have?
Family values are pretty much going out the window. I mean, so many people are looking into professions, and that's the number one goal.
I agree with that. Loss of family values. A lot of people say our country's going to pot. Our country's what we make of it as a whole. That's why things that weren't accepted decades ago may be accepted now because the attitudes have changed. Yes, sir.
Greed and selfishness.
Greed and selfishness.
Expendable income. People want expendable income. They don't want to have monotone where they're having to drive a used car. Both members want to work in the family and there's left going out of it.
It's all on me. It's what I can get out of it. It's what I can do. Yes, sir.
So a lot of it has to do with television raising kids.
And we're too busy popping down in front of the TV. They're saying so many acts of violence. I don't know what's going on. We're not even concerned enough with what. We have a favorite president. Anybody ever hear of John F. Kennedy? Anybody not hear of him? Theodore Roosevelt? People like that? They adhere to a value that they believe not ask what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country. What can we do to make it a better place? What we can do to make our professions a better profession? What can we do to make our departments better departments? I was given something today that I hadn't seen previously. There's a list that I just got a hold of, by the way. It shows the top 12 professions in 1980 in order of preference of where Americans' loyalty lay, who they had the most trust in. And then in 1995, I'm not going to put it up there, but I'll say in 1980, the number one was pharmacist. I better trust the local drugstore guy. Number two is the clergy. Police officer was number 5. Midstream, but we weren't in the top 5. We were in the top 5. We were number 5. People trust the cops. Got a problem? Let's call the cops because they're going to do what is right. By 1995, our stock plummeted to number 10. People don't trust the police like they used to. People don't trust the cops. Some of that may be fake cops, this or that. Yes, sir.
If cops went over that at 10 and 95, who was number 11?
Number 11, funny you should bring that up, is the lawyer.
Jesus. Neck and neck with lawyers?
I've never, I don't place a lot of faith in lawyers because if you've done any time in the courtroom, you can appreciate the same thing. We are just better than a lawyer, according to this statute. I'm saying why? Yes, profession we're in. That means our neighbors, people we go to church with, that's what they think of us. A lot of that has to do with publicity. I mean, video cameras are everywhere. And it seems like every time you see a cop on TV, he's beating something, kicking something, or shooting something. You know, you don't see, because, you know, they don't think it's newsworthy. How many times have you seen the cops out there pushing a person's car out of the roadway instead of calling the wrecker, which he could. He didn't got to push that car out of the roadway. If it's blocking the roadway, you can't get it out of the roadway yourself. Call a wrecker. It's going to cost you $70 to hook up minimum. How many times has the cops went out there and pushed that car out of the road? Good friend of mine just the other day. The lady didn't know how to change a tire. Man, he got out there in his uniform, in a vest, in the middle of the day and changed her tire. I didn't see that on 6 o'clock news. But I guarantee you, if he got to a brawl with somebody, hit somebody, somebody could have got a picture of it, regardless of the circumstance around, that'd have been on the news. You know, so that's what they're looking at. We got visual learners in our country. And all they learn from is TV set. Are they learning what we really are? Well, we got cops programs. Trying to make contact back out with the citizens. Trying to put it back out there. Look, this is what we're really about. We're out here. Our motto and creed. What is the law enforcement motto and creed, anybody? Serve and protect. Protect and serve. When we're not out protecting, we should be out serving. You go out to a burglar call, people's house just got ransacked, a little bit too late to do the protecting aspect of that. It's time to do the serving aspect of it. Do everything you can for these people. That means writing a long, lengthy report because they just got everything they own in their entire life taken from them. I mean, just taking the time and doing what you're supposed to do. That means processing the scene and not just throwing dust for effort. I've seen that. Well, I've seen officers out there with the dust like it was a paintbrush. And you ain't going to get a print that way. It's not going to happen. Thing is, they don't want a print. Because that's something they have to put in evidence. It may be something, it may be a resident, it could be. But that's not what we call the service aspect of it. Many statistics indicate that Americans are less ethical today than in previous decades. Some of the reasons that they list are the same that we've listed. Single-parent homes. How many broken homes did our grandparents have that were really out there talked about all through the church? My grandparents stood together till they died. You know, that's just the way people work. Now you're talking about where both parents in the home, they're married, but they're both working to make ends meet because of where our society's got. You got mom and dad both working. Who's watching the kids? TV set. Somebody brought up. Another thing that they brought up was the lack of interest in our children. Our children are our future. I mean, I've gone out, picked up runaways, brought them down to the station, and mom and dad don't. I ain't got time to come get them. I don't want to come get them. Then you have to read that little portion of the statute, failure to neglect. You know, you don't come get your kids, I'm going to come arrest you because you're supposed to provide for them. You know, or you get the shoplifter. Mom and dad's all upset. They come down to PD. I don't know what the problem is. He's got money. We got money. I'm a doctor. She's a lawyer. Why would he steal anything? I don't know. You tell me. Why would a kid steal something unless it's a way of getting somebody's attention? It could be. Or maybe they thought it was cool. They get a little bit of a rush out of it. But parents are not as concerned about their children or involved with their children as they once were. CBS News report revealed how much the ethical dilemmas of America's youth have changed from the 1940s until present day. Can somebody give me what they think was the biggest problem a school-age child had back in the 1940s?
Get caught chewing gum.
That's on that list.
Talking in class.
That's on that list too.
Getting good grades.
All these things are on the list. School resource, well, neither one of our school resource officers are here tonight. But if I were a school resources officer and that was the biggest problem I had, going to work would be a cakewalk. Back in the 40s, things were so good, they didn't bother having police officers in their schools. Why do we got them in our schools today? It's dangerous. We never got kids that are school age. I do. It terrifies me because my son's taught to golf in middle school. And after that is high school. And these are the age group kids that I'm arresting. And they got, and most of them have got well-to-do parents, living in nice neighborhoods. In the 1940s, the top 7 offense, biggest thing that they had to worry about was talking out of turn, number 1. Then chewing gum was number 2. I mean, these were the 2 biggest problems that they had. Then you had making noise, running in the halls, cutting in line, disobeying the dress code. What dress code? I never had one. They used to have dress codes in all schools. It seems to me that the more, as a society, we accept, the more we're going to have to put up with. So if our acceptance level is here, we're going to get buried up to here. If we drop our acceptance level, what we tolerate, then they're going to have to come down and compensate for that. But that's in the 1940s. Now it was an old report, so it only went up to the 80s. Because the stats for the 90s won't be into the 90s. It's over because they do it by decade. But by the 1980s, the number 1 problem in school, I want to talk in 40 years. What is that, generation? A full, complete generation. Chewing gum, talking in class, drug abuse. Anybody in here not believe drug abuse is a major problem with our kids today? If you do, for rude awakening when your kids get old enough to experiment with these kind of things, or hang out with those who do. Second problem was alcohol abuse. Then it goes down to pregnancy, suicide, rape, robbery, assault. Our kids have gone from chewing gum and not wearing a proper dress code to taking guns to school. Taking money by force. It ain't little Johnny just, look, I'm going to take your milk money and beat you up. You don't give it to me. You don't give me milk money, I'm just going to shoot you. I got the gun right here to do it. How do we fix it? As a society. How can we fix what took 40 years to deteriorate from chewing gum to carrying guns? Nobody got suggestions.
Still the family values again.
Go back to a lot of that.
Like you said, tolerate less.
Tolerate less.
Start letting their teachers spank them again.
I got spanked. I got spanked with a paddle that had holes drilled in it to give you that little air pocket when it went through.
Yeah, I was in Catholic school. I know what that's like.
It only happened to me once. It only happened to me once because I knew that was the teacher not to mess with. Just like inmates, they know which guards that they can mess with, which ones they can't. But how we instill the values in these children when they don't have them at home to reinforce it? What can we do? What can we do based on the profession we're in?
Provide role models and try and instill it as best we can.
That's it. We make the contact with the kids and they come up to ask you a question. Look, son, I ain't got time for you. Well, excuse me, they get that at home. You know, little kids down the street when I'm in my patrol car, they're sitting there waving at me. I'm making a point to wave back at them. I'm hoping they're not waving a gun when I go by, but I'm making a point to wave back at them. We can't replace their mamas and daddies. Lord knows I wish somebody would replace their mamas and daddies in a lot of cases. But all we can do is when we make contact with them, make that as positive of a contact as we can make. You may only spend 30 seconds with this kid, but you may set an impression on him that will last a lifetime. Who in here was their dream to grow up and be a law enforcement professional? Wasn't mine. I fell into it initially because I needed a job. Then when I got into it, I'm like, this is pretty cool. It's a lot like the military, which I was assimilating, really. It wasn't my life dream. As a kid, I had no law enforcement contact, unless you count my mother who beat me with a broomstick. My mother was the kind of mother, academics will work on it. Misbehavior was unconscionable, intolerable, and you better not let her find out about it. Because my mother had 4th grade education. She said, you just do the best you can as far as that. We'll deal with it. We'll get extra time, get you help, get you with the tutors we got. Don't go to school and misbehave. My mother was a big lady, especially when I was 10 years old. My mother stood at 5'11". So when I say my mother was a big lady, she was a good old Mississippi gal. And nothing worse than peeling off your own switch for her to use it. And don't you bring the smallest one off that tree back to her.
Should be right at the tree.
Bring them
My mom would go out there and get, instead of a switch, a branch. How can we instill? We can't be their parents. We can't be the mom and dad. We can't try. We got the cops out there. Cops program, we got the bicycle officers, and we got the street officers. Polk County's got a boot camp. I don't know what the yes sir.
It's funny you should say about the 30 seconds you spend with a child. It's an impression. I wanted to be a police officer since I was 6 years old, and the reason was because I got lost in Coney Island on the 4th of July. There had to be 1 million people there, and I kind of strayed in the water and came out, and the current pushes you,
Right.
and I was lost. And here comes this New York City mounted police officer, and he was God to me up on that horse. Pulled me up on top of the horse, and we just rode the shore until I spotted something that, I said, oh, okay, that looks like the umbrella, the color of the umbrella. And sure enough, it was like, took an hour and a half, 2 hours, but just looking at him, I was so impressed and so.
One contact in time affected your life.
Exactly. From that moment on, I knew what I wanted to do.
Contact in time that affected my life because I had relatives that were in the military. I knew I wanted to go in the military until I got into the military. But I wanted to go into the military eventually. At the time I went into the military goes back to the time I got in law enforcement. I needed a job. And not to go off on a tangent, but I had already had a family when I went in the Army. Had a wife. Carter administration, I was a machinist, and there were no longer defense contracts. We show up for work one day for shift and it's locked up. I didn't even get my last paycheck in this place and I had bills to pay. So I packed up my family and moved from Mississippi to Texas in hope of a better life, and it didn't exist there either. So I walk into my Army recruiter's office because of a little podunk town I was in. That was the only recruiting office there. The Army's got a recruiting office where nobody else will put one. And I walk in there, just give you a little side of it, I wasn't the clean-cut, nicely spoken person I am here today. I've been a machinist. I had Army boots, but they got the gouges, got the oil stains, blue jeans with acid holes burned into it, the welder shirt with acid holes, burned here, cuts, whatever. Hair down to my shoulders at least. I don't remember how far down it went. One of those OD or light green field jackets. And I walk in to this recruiting station because I knew I could get me a job. By God, it was time to get a job. This is the way I was going to get it. Man didn't even shake my hand, didn't even introduce himself. He was a black staff sergeant, got up from behind his desk, placed his hand on my shoulder and said, son, I know I can help you. That's what he said to me. Didn't matter what I wanted to do. He said he knew he could help me because it was obvious I had a problem in my life. And it wasn't malnutrition. But that's how the value system goes. You get 30 seconds in time. That may be your only golden opportunity to touch that life for one time. And you may not even think about it again. But years ago, they may see you again and think about it. What I want to talk about is the three or the traditional institutions that have influenced a person's ethics. There are three primary institutions that we in this country give credit to for instilling ethics in our kids. One's family, which we already learned about. Two's religion. Take your kids to church, you know. All religions got something positive in part to it. And the third's government, schools, us, and after they've been arrested, some of my good friends. But that's how we try to control people. In the 1940s and for generations before, we relied on family, religion, and schools together to impart essential civic and moral values. But since then, we have witnessed the gradual erosion of the family, single-parent home. Everybody in the home working, nobody's home with the kids. Latchkey kids. Anybody ever hear that term?
Yeah.
The kids get home from school, there ain't even nobody there. They find themselves. And the rejection of values from the public school institution or instruction. And as a result, the moral development of our children has suffered greatly. The family is the first social organization that the children belong to. We had a class on gang problems. Why do you think they're in a gang? Group. They need family because they ain't got no family at home. Family doesn't have to be blood. Hopefully it is, but it doesn't have to be blood. You go to jail. Sometimes you bring an inmate into the jail. When I was there, I take them up, put them in the house there. We just put this person in. But it's like a family reunion. They all know him. They're having a good time. Scare Straight program. When they bring the little kids through school, through the jails, trying to scare them straight. I was at the annex. One little kid, what impressed me the most, or not impressed me, but imparted to me the most, was when he was exiting through the Sally Port, through one of those Sally Port doors. And we're talking about an 11-year-old kid. Couldn't have been over 12. I heard him say, "This ain't so bad, I can do this." I thought the idea was to scare these kids from doing it, not enforce to them that it ain't this bad to do. We talked about religion. The Ten Commandments, the Bible's Ten Commandments express the ethical principles central to Christianity. Every religion teaches some kind of morals and ethics. Anybody ever hear the term "God is dead"? Anybody ever hear that? Or anybody not hear that? When do you think that came popular or came about? 70s. It came real popular in the 70s. The guy who formulated that term was Friedrich Nietzsche. He was born in 1844 and died in 1900. He was a German philosopher and author who was renowned for his statement that God is dead, but by which he meant that religion had lost its meaningfulness in modern society, and he believed that people should live by knowledge and the conscious or the upper conscious that knowledge brings. Well, whether he knows it or not, he may not believe in God, but he has a religion, and his religion is knowledge. And knowledge can teach morals, if you let it. I want to talk briefly, because it's time to get very brief. Officer decertification. According to the National Institute of Ethics, the top 5 reasons that an officer in this country decertified are. Just somebody give me one reason why they think, what's the number one reason they think officers in this country are lying, false statement. That is the number one reason officers in this country are decertified. And I'll give you a clue. It's not the rookie officers that are getting decertified in this country. The veteran officers between 5 and 10 years experience. It's the guys our rookie officers are supposed to be looking up to that are getting fired, decertified. Top 5 reasons are false statement, larceny, sex offenses other than rape, battery, and to round out the top 5, DUI. If you've got problems, you've got to suck it in the bottle. W. Edwards Deming was a very wise man when he stated everything is a process. Applying that principle, we can set a process in which we can be ethical. It could be your church process, the golden rule, be whatever process you believe that will help you make and do what is right. Not just what your buddies think is the right thing because we're hanging out together. The first thing I've got in my ethical process is wanting to be ethical. One, there's got to be a genuine desire to do this, or you won't do it. Ever hear the term preaching to the choir? Well, I'm preaching to the choir right now. You know what preaching to the choir means? Preaching to the choir, yes, sir.
It means that the choir's heard everything that the preacher's going to say and
Right.
they know it all.
Yeah, they know. They're right behind the pulpit. Preaching to the choir means I'm preaching to the people who should know it. But it also means I'm preaching to the people who need it the most. Ever been involved in a church had a scandal? In my church, it was in the choir box. What a problem with it. Preaching to the choir, I'm preaching to the people that we're in a profession that it should be a standard. It should be just generally accepted that we're going to be ethical people. But it's not. The second thing in my standard is setting aside illegal choices and those against such policy. You take what's against the law, those things that's already written down not to do, chunk them out to begin with, that eliminates a lot of the problem. And the third thing is that you do what is right to the best of your ability and knowledge. That means, does that mean you work every call correctly? Does that mean you work every problem in jail correctly? No. Correctness is semantics based on policy and the law. But if you do everything to the best of your ability and your knowledge as you know in your heart, this is the right course of action, and don't do something that you know to be wrong or do something that you know to be wrong, you should be fine because you're doing what you believe to be right. And that's the rule I try to live by. But you have to want to do it. Army Rangers, since we got some ex-Army people in here, they have a saying. It's called lead the way. Rangers lead the way. First in. We are in this class because we want to train, or we want to improve ourselves, or we want to better our departments, or we want to improve our professions, or we were told to improve our professions. Depending on what the case may be. But the bottom line is we're here. Now you can walk away with this class with just a certificate, or you can walk away with class with some of the knowledge you've attained. I've learned something at every single class that's been presented because I wanted to. Rangers lead the way. When we go back to our departments, when we go back to our little circle of work people, we can't rely on them to do what is right. We can only rely on ourselves to do what is right. And if we're not going to do what is right, then why should we expect them to do what is right? And if they're not doing what is right, we should bring it up. I don't mean go down to the captain's office. You know what Joe Schmo's doing? Hey Joe, let's me and you have a cup of coffee. Because I got a problem with some of the things you're doing. Okay? Has anybody got any questions about anything that I've covered tonight? Any questions at all? You got my name. You each got a business card. I'm going to give you, as we exit the class, a copy of my outline. If I ever can be a benefit to you, because sometimes when we're teaching a class like this, it would be more difficult for me to stand in front of my department and give the same class than it would be to have somebody I know that is trying to live what they preach and come in and teach that class. And if you ever need, if I can ever help you in any way, you call. Free of charge. You can't beat free labor.
I'll take that one.
Because I don't do this. I am not getting compensated for this class. I'm not getting overtime for this class. I'm not getting time. I'm in this class for what I can come away from this class with. I have my complete outline. If you can teach it yourself, pass it around. If you can use it, plagiarism is the best compliment to me, as long as you're going to try to live it. Has anybody got anything? Any questions, any comments? Well, then that concludes my presentation on evidence.